Welcome to Success Tips for Beginner Educators. My name is Leah Faye, and I will be walking you through my tips and my visual observation. So, within my observation, I did an observation in the classroom environment. I interviewed a different variety of teachers for first grade, third grade, ninth grade, and 11th grade educators. I completed 2 research papers that consisted of both instruction and assessment, and then I focus on the different educational theories that can be found within the between the two observations that I completed. So, tip number 1 is having classroom management. Basically understanding what it looks like, what it means, and how might you go about creating your own classroom to make sure that everything stays tidy and well put together. Another thing I mentioned was being able to control your classroom and making sure that you know how you want your classroom to be ran. If an administrator was to walk into your classroom, how are your students good at listening to your instruction? How do you go about switching from one lesson to another? How do you go about basically enforcing rules when it comes to students' behavior? Another thing was keeping everything in order and settled, which is basically making sure that your classroom stays clean. And then the last one is one of the main important things that I feel like is helpful for both the teacher and the students is creating a social contract between you and your students. Basically, a social contract states all the things that you want to accomplish within your classroom for your students to understand, and that you two are on the same page. From the image on the right, you can see one of the things says take care of our classroom, keep our hands to ourselves, be nice to friends, and so on and so forth. Basically just understanding and making sure that the students understand what you expect for your classroom rules. It is also very helpful for the students to come up with their own contract rules so that they know that whenever something was to happen behavior-wise, they can just look back to what they agreed upon and what they decided to come across. The second tip is having classroom communication, basically just being able to allow students to talk to you whenever things are not the best at times. A few points that I mentioned was communicate their problems. Allow them to tell you what's going on without them feeling basically closed in all the time. Voicing your opinion or voicing their opinion because it matters. I feel like every student is human just the same way as an adult. You should talk to them with respect as much as you want to receive the respect. Another thing that I found very important was having a verbal, nonverbal, and written forms of communication when something is wrong. One of the main examples that I chose was slips that can ensure like how their day was. So if you go about the entire day and one of the students didn't feel well, but they didn't want to say anything, they can write it on that time slip and tell you rather, how might you be a help for them in the future. Another thing is, what can you do differently today or tomorrow that you did yesterday? The last one is allow students to remove themselves from distractions. I feel as though when students remove themselves, they try to prevent themselves from getting in trouble, and it makes the classroom run smoother, in my opinion. Another method you can see towards the right, allow students to basically show hand signals to show or explain what they may need from you. I feel like that's more convenient instead of being interrupted throughout the whole class so that students can be assisted. The next tip 3, is building relationships. When you create individual relationships with your students, it gives them a sense of comfortability and making sure that they feel safe within your presence. Not every student may feel comfortable talking to their teacher, but not every student may be comfortable talking to like an administrator as well. So you just have to ensure that you are there and that they know that they can rely on you to be there whenever something is wrong. Another thing is making sure you have a relationship with their parents. Sometimes parents may want more from you as a teacher other than you just teaching their students. Sometimes when a student goes home, they don't talk to the student doesn't talk to their parent, and some parents may notice that the student gravitate more towards the teacher and is more comfortable with the teacher, and sometimes those parents may need that extra push so that they can understand what's going on with their child. Another one is allow students to take notes of their own behavior. And this basically means that students should ensure that they understand that if I'm being a disruption to my peers, I should change something. Rearrange seating for students to build connections. I think that whenever you allow students to choose their own seating, as long as it's not a distraction, of course, it can allow them to create connections with their peers. And this can also help with team building later on in the semester when they have like group projects and things like that. Attend student-based events and attend your student games. I think that when a teacher shows a lot of pride in their students' work, accomplishments, and the things that they're interested in, it creates a sense of relationship building as well. So I think that's very important. The next step or next tip that I will address is teach goal setting. This kind of ties into the assessment part of my observation. The first three tied into instruction. So for teaching goal setting, teach students to persevere through struggles. This basically means that when they have standardized testing or when they have testing overall, they seem to get overwhelmed. So just encourage them that they're able to do it, even though they may feel like they can't. We also focus a lot on, in our individual education classes, the I can statements that should be found in like lesson plans. You can also include those into your everyday teaching standards so that students know that they can do it and that can't should not be in their vocabulary overall. Another point was have good things moment. Have a good things moment. This basically means tell me something positive that has happened in your life, whether it's like something major, what if it's something like minor. Just being able to allow students to have that time to share out because it keeps them on a positive mindset. Another one is allow your students to track their growth throughout the year. Some teachers have their students like star goals on their walls, and it basically shows how a student does from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. It shows their student growth. Allow those students to have their own growth charts and like their photo or something similar so that they know where they start from and where they want to end up at. This kind of ties into the next point, which is how SMART goals, which is different ways to describe SMART goals. So I have an image on the right, and I also have statements in the parentheses, which were strategic, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So basically with SMART, you're basically setting a goal for yourself as a teacher and for your students. Allow the students to create their own SMART goals just so they understand what they want to achieve by the end of the year. So for the S is what you're trying to accomplish. The M is your intended outcome. How would you achieve that goal? The A is your goal. Like, is your goal realistic? And what actions will you take in order to complete that goal? The R is how does this align with the teacher standards or the teacher wants for the classroom? And the T is when do you want to achieve the goal by? Tip number 5 is practice and preparing. This basically ties into the assessment portion as well. One of the points I created was create practice exams to prepare your students for finals and standardized tests. Allow students to ask questions, reiterate that there is no such thing as a dumb question, and practice focusing on tasks for longer than 30 minutes. Give students a break to reset and allow music from time to time. I feel like all these tie in together because it allows the students to have a sense of like release. For some students, they may be overwhelmed at times, and I think that points such as give students a break to reset. You can just have a nice cool down moment. Allow students to put their head down for a little while because over time, when it's time for assessments, they get overwhelmed, they feel stressed, they feel like their head is cluttered, and then they freeze up, and then they may not do so well on their test. So I think that having moments like that allows them to like feel like stress-free at times. Another thing is allowing music from time to time. I think that over time, as I was navigating through my high school years and middle school, I think that music kind of puts me in a calm mindset and allows me to work better. For some people, it may not be that way. So I would say like have like a jazz type of tune or just have some slow tune music so that the students can feel calm and a sense of like relaxation. So in regards to my theory, the main things that I wanted to touch on within my observation was Bloom's taxonomy. Basically, my understanding from it is different methods for assessment, and it helps develop learning outcomes through different steps. So the main steps that I decided to work on within my observation was apply, create, and understand. So for apply, it's basically applying the rules, the facts, the ideas that you may have as a educator. For create, it is combining new parts to make a whole, and understanding is basically understanding what the facts may mean. So as a teacher, we have to set goals for ourselves so that our students are able to understand the material basically thoroughly. You have to create different ways because not every student is learning the same that you may expect them to. So you just have to adjust sometimes. And every step within Bloom's taxonomy has different measures to it. So in order for you to be able to analyze, you must evaluate what facts you want to discuss or what ideas you want to discuss and things of that nature. It kind of goes on. So in order for you to understand, you must apply what you have learned over time and things of that nature. That's really the main thing that I wanted to discuss with Bloom taxonomy, because not many people understand the reasoning behind it and how might it be helpful towards an educator. So for my overall observation, what did I learn? I learned that when grades progress, the instruction and assessment becomes more difficult, and student behavior is affected by distractions, and not every teacher will be the same. So for example, as you start teaching, you will understand that every student learns differently. You have to also understand that when it comes to assessments, they may want to shut down, and that's okay, but you have to reiterate them that it's okay to shut down for a little while, but you have to also get back in the grind of things and focusing on what you set as your end goal. That brings us back to our SMART goals over time, because as students, we often, because I'm speaking as a college student right now, we often try to give up whenever the task becomes too difficult. And overall, based on observation, I've noticed that many students tend to do the same thing as they're growing up. And when it comes to basically standardized tests and tests that they need to pass, such as like the Georgia milestone, or like even in not college, but for high school, you got to think about the ACT, SAT, things of that nature. Basically teaching them that your focus is very important, that you should take care of yourself, make sure you are actually preparing for things like that. But if you have any questions for me, that is all, and I hope you enjoy.